Secret Circle.
And welcome back to The Secret Circle with me, Luke Deckard, the podcast where I chat with authors, filmmakers, musicians, and more about the art of their craft and let you in on some of their secrets. Today's guest is WGA writer Brooks Elms. Brooks is a screenwriter, independent filmmaker, and a life coach for writers. His speciality is grounded personal characters and writing story with tension so thick it knots your stomach. He's written over 25 screenplays, plus a dozen of them on assignment, and has sold several scripts. Basically, he knows what he's talking about, and I'm excited to talk with him about screenwriting today. So without further ado, let's bring in Brooks. Brooks, welcome to The Secret Circle.
Thank you. I feel welcome, and I'm excited to be here.
Good. I'm glad. I'm really chuffed that we've been able to kind of connect and bring you on. I love chatting with fellow writers who are in all different stages of their their careers and lives and stuff like that. So this is really fun. So let's kick off first with talking about your role as a life coach for writers, because we were mentioning kind of off before we were recording kind of what that means, and I think it'd be interesting for listeners to sort of also understand and better detail what that means. What does it mean to be a life coach for writers?
I love that question. The main thing with like life coaching in general is like you've got a life. And you have a coach helping you with that life. I mean, it's almost like it's just two brains working on one set of problems, and it's a wide open field, and it's actually really pretty awesome, especially when you get coached by really good people. It makes a massive difference, and it's really cool too because it's anywhere from like free to like $1 million, and you can structure it, and as long as you're getting more than you pay, it can be a really good deal. And there's people that pay all sorts of money for it. On the learning the craft of writing side, I was teaching at UCLA Extension, and teaching is really was satisfying because at that point I'd already written, I don't know, 35 scripts or more or something. And I was like, well, how am I doing what I'm doing? And how can I explain it in a way that's as helpful as possible in a formal setting? And I did that for a few years, and I was like, it was great. But then I also had this background in personal growth. And so, which just meant like, men's groups and like, I was actually a certified massage therapist when I first got to LA. Like, I just loved personal exploration. I had a really amazing, intense therapist in my 20s. So like, I've always been into personal growth. And then after a couple of years teaching formally at UCLA Extension, I was like, well, hold on a second. There's 30 students in a class and like, or 20. I was like really connecting with like 2 or 3, and the rest was just fine. I was like, what if I just work with those people? And then I was like, oh, I kind of actually been sort of training to be a life coach for 20 years. And I've been, and I was like, why don't I just be a life coach for a screenwriter? And then what I realized was like, oh, that's actually really awesome. So all the things I liked about helping other people with their own life, and what I could do as a professional screenwriter, I could teach them. So it's basically the craft stuff is like the starting point. Like I can help them develop a new TV show or feature at a professional level, but really it's an excuse to go deeper. Like what's your life purpose? Why are you here? What's going on? And it's one interesting distinction for people that are new to life coaching. Like therapy is sort of like, ooh, I got to like get stuff together so I can manage my life. Life coaching kind of takes up where therapy leaves off for the most part, where it's like looking forward, how do you go from good to great, or great to like phenomenal, or phenomenal to like legendary, world class. And so just about where you are.
I love that. I'm curious, like when with kind of that in mind, how do you work with writers in terms of kind of fusing, life coaching with helping them, sharpen their craft and sharpen them as a writer? Because I mean, writers, our identity is so wrapped up in that. I mean, that is who we are. We're storytellers. It's not, there's some people who they have their day job and that's kind of not really who they are, in some sense. Whereas I think with other people, they're, and I think particularly with writers, we are the writer first, even if that's not our day job, kind of thing. So how do you approach that with someone and sort of help them come to terms with who they are as a writer, help them like build them up as a writer, and kind of mold that in with general life coaching.
It's a great question. And one of the things I definitely do, well, I always meet people where they're at, right? Because we're all on a discovery journey, right? We'll have insights, and then life happens, and then more insights, and life happens, and we're kind of learning some of the same patterns, just in deeper ways. Myself, all of us, it's part of being human, right? So I try to meet people exactly where they're at. And so everybody has a sense of their identity. And I've actually found it's generally more helpful for writers to not identify as a writer. It's more satisfying approach to life, in my own experience and in the people that I coach, to be a human being who writes as opposed to a writer.
Yeah.
And the reason is the business is inherently a roller coaster. There's going to be hot periods and cold periods, and hot periods and cold periods. And so if I'm identifying as a writer, who the F am I when I'm in a cold period? I'm nothing. Yeah. And that is really dangerous. It's also equally sort of dangerous or just emotionally unstable to be like, oh, I'm in a hot period. Look at me, blah, blah, blah. So like, either one is really, it's really a distraction from what we really want to do most, which is show up and create and have good relationships and entertain the hell out of the audience. I mean, that's the deepest core. And it's deeper than the identity of a writer. And so one other way to think about it is, when somebody's identifying as a writer, they're riding the roller coaster of their career, and they're usually white knuckling it, and it's difficult.
Yes.
The better way to do it is to stand right next to the roller coaster, so you're separate. Your feet are firmly on the ground.
Right.
And you're like, I'm cool. Whatever happens, you go, oh, look, my career's taken off. This is awesome. Oh, my career took a turn. Now it's going down. Oh, it's going back up again. Oh, there's a loop. Like, then you're enjoying the whole thing, and you're hearing the screams. Yes. You're part of it, but you're not riding the ride because it's too much. You don't need that much effing excitement. You want a sort of steady, boring, blissful awesomeness of a life.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's very perspective focused, isn't it? Because if you're looking at the roller coaster rather than being on that, if you're on the roller coaster, you really can't see anything. You're just like, what the shit's happening? But if you're back and you can take in that whole picture, that's fascinating. I love that.
And I can tell you how it happened because personal experience. Like I've made all the mistakes, some of them several times, and one of them was this idea that like, oh, I'm going to get to that professional level. Got signed by the best spec sales agent in Hollywood. And I was like, this is great. Like, get the wheelbarrow. It's going to be a pile of money on me set for life. That's not how it works. You know, there's hot A-listers. Everybody gets hot periods, cold periods.
Yes.
If you are Tom Cruise, right, he has 20 projects in development or whatever, and he gets to choose obviously what he wants to do and when, but like there's too many variables for anybody to really have it completely solved. So what I try to do is say, hey, plan for an existence that is an agile reaction to the variables that I haven't solved yet. Like, I've solved a lot of stuff, a lot of difficult problems, but packaging is a really tricky one. And so the rate of things getting set up is, but I can get like, if you follow my systems, you will write at the professional level. If you've got the real chops, like you're really serious about it, right?
Yeah.
But you follow my systems, you will write at the professional level, and you will get producers attached. Like, to me, that's like, I don't guarantee it, but like, if you don't, it's because you haven't shown up to the gym. Like, I can get you the 6-pack abs. You got to show up to the gym, and I have fun ways to do it. So you want to work out, but like, it's a lock if you show up. Getting it produced is, it's where I'm at in my own career. I've sold a lot of stuff, but my stuff hasn't quite gotten produced, and I'm in the process of solving that too, but I'm still in the process.
Yeah. I think that's another interesting point is, I know other writers who in kind of in that same situation where they've sold stuff, but once you get it sold, getting it produced is very difficult. So that's a whole nother kind of beast to be battling with.
If I can jump in quick, I would invite you not to say it's difficult. I would say, because that's a more of a disempowering way to frame it. It's a situation where we have limited control,
Mm,
right? So great, you know, I've got projects, Oscar-winning producer attached, A-listers
yeah.
like that, and it's still they're just there's so many moving parts
Yeah.
that and there's like, you know, I can be involved in the packaging process or not. I get those choices.
Right.
And if I'm involved, then I'm part of the team that's packaging it and doing strategy. But there's still a process, and so
Yeah.
there's again there are things that we're doing. Like I'm like the one thing I'm doing next to again tilt the odds in my favor is
Yeah.
direct audience building, because you have the
Mm,
internet. You can have a podcast. You can have whatever. You can build
yeah.
your audience before you actually create a movie or whatever. So that's really the
Yeah.
next step, and I feel like that's a winnable game, and I'm in the
Mm,
process of really making that system. Everything I do is systematic. So actually, if there's
right.
anybody watching this that likes sort of the way I think about things, I'll give you a link where you can really focus on 5 different systems of your writing career. And they're really simple ways of just rating yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How good am I at knowing my superpower, at, you know, at having like a social network that supports me, and blah, blah. There's 5
Yes.
of them. Really simple. It's free, but it'll give you a sense of how I see that, you know, like if you're evaluating yourself and you're like 2 to 10 on all those things, it's very unlikely you're going to be selling a script for significant money.
Right.
I like to see the people that I work with up at like, you know, 9 out of 10 on average, you know, and when you're
Yeah.
doing that, it's inevitable. You're going to, again, there's all these different things that are variables that are out of our control.
Yeah.
And there's things that are in our control. So
Yeah.
that free system evaluation, you know, is a great way to go. Oh yeah, I didn't realize. Yeah, I totally can control this. One other quick thing about this idea of, is it difficult, or do we frame it differently? There was a
Mm,
great basketball coach at UCLA for many years, this guy John Wooden. He at one point his teams won 10 out of 12 NCAA championships in men's
dang.
college basketball, which is one of the most competitive sort of, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
there's thousands of these teams. He won 10 out of
Yeah.
12. And
Jeez.
one of the things he would do, they called him the Wizard of Westwood. He was a guy who was a legend. He was amazing. And partly it wasn't about basketball. It was about beyond. He was teaching them to be
Mm,
human beings in the community that were amazing through the game of basketball. And one of the things
yeah.
he would do on the very first practice, where you're like, oh my God, this guy's a legend, one of those championships, he would say, okay, everybody sit down, take out socks, and here's how you put your sock on. You roll it up like this.
Ah.
And they're like, what?
Yeah.
What? You want? But here was a point. If you don't do something as simple as roll your sock up, which is 100% in your control to do it right, you
Mm,
might throw it on quickly and get a wrinkle that could create a blister. And that blister is a distraction in the game. And he was like, I'm minimizing all the effing distractions.
wow.
That's what I'm talking about. So that's what I like to do as a coach of writers. I like to get specific on things that really do matter.
Yeah.
And partly because it was so subtle, he did it
Yeah.
first to kind of just send a message, I think.
Yes.
But like,
Yes.
there's a lot of stuff we can't control, and it seems like we might call it difficult, but that's why we want to really focus on what is on our control, what really does make the difference. And
Yeah.
when you do that, the odds actually bend in your favor.
Yeah. I love that. That's actually really cool and clever and an interesting way to sort of, yeah, get everyone on the same page. I love that. I love that. So more sort of about you, Brooks, as a writer. Something I like to ask all the writers who I bring on my podcasts. Why do you specifically write, or feel the need or compulsion to write?
Oh, you know, it's such a basic question, but I don't, yeah, I really appreciate that question. I write as an extension of how I think.
Hmm.
And when I was making movies with my friends in like high school,
Mm.
we were like, hey, let's do this karate movie. And it was fun. It was best idea wins. And there was a social aspect of it. And it was a group creative activity. And that was fun to be part of that group and make this movie. And then it was really effing fun to show that movie to another friend. I specifically, he literally fell out of the chair laughing at this movie. I was like, oh my God, that part was almost as fun as, it was just as fun as making the movie. So like I was hooked from an
Yeah.
early age. And then I went to NYU Film School. and where I quickly learned that, like, my favorite movie at the time was one of my favorites was Jean-Claude Van Damme's Bloodsport. And I was about the only one at NYU Film School that, like, what? How come you guys don't like Bloodsport? But there's layers and there's levels. And so I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I had some personal stuff in my life. My dad wasn't around as much, and then he died when I was 17. And I was trying to make sense of that, my own mortality and my own sort of experience of abandonment with my dad. At the same time, I was learning about deeper ways of creating films and thinking about films and getting film literate. Why are people talking about Scorsese or Kubrick or whatever and not, I don't even know who directed Bloodsport. And I just started getting a depth and understanding of that way. And so then writing became a way of making sense of what was hurting, for me. How was I struggling? How was I, I had some relationships that were good and some that weren't as sort of balanced or strong. How come? And I was drawn to that in such a deep way. And writing helped me make sense of it. And then I learned over time that when I'm at my best as a writer, or when I'm coaching somebody and they're at their best, we're writing about some sort of life lesson for ourselves, and also like for the next person that's kind of like in that situation. And so to me, that's partly why being a life coach for writers feels it feels the same as when I write. Like when I write a story, I feel like I'm actually coaching the audience through this sort of parable. And when I work with somebody one-on-one, I just zero in on where they are in their life, and I just try to help them one significant step forward. Often the deeper stuff is more impactful, but it's whatever they're ready to sort of face.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think that's a really great kind of understanding of why you're right. That's really good. I'm also curious about voice and writers finding their voice. I think sometimes that can be really tricky and really difficult. I remember doing my master's several years ago. The lecture in the room, we were, everyone brought in some work and we were, reading it and critiquing it, all that kind of stuff. And the lecturer, was reading mine, and he's like, I'm reading this is good, this is fun, da 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 da. He's like, but I'm waiting to read, a Luke Deckard story. Like I'm waiting, like this is good, but I'm waiting for you. Like where are you on the, where are you on the page? And that really sort of hit me, and it took me a while to sort of reevaluate myself and my writing, kind of channel my voice instead of like imitating people who I liked and stuff like that. So a question for you then is how did you find your voice as a writer, as a director? Was that difficult?
It's a great question. So the way I found mine was sort of what I said before. I was making sense of some significant personal challenges in my life at a time when I was surrounded by all these wonderful film geeks that were saying, look, these are the movies that like we are really excited about. These other ones we aren't. And the ones that they were all more excited about had effing depth. I didn't always agree with everything, but there was layers. They were saying something about life. And so the nexus of me sorting out my own life problems and, movies that my film school buddies were really into, I was like, oh, you can actually go to really deep personal places. And so the senior thesis film that I made for NYU was basically the conflict that I had my previous year. So I went home from NYU like my junior year or whatever, and I fell in love with this woman, and she was wonderful. And I was like, this is great. I was one of those guys that had really close friendships. My dad wasn't around, and so my family kind of became my friends in some ways. So I had really tight friendships. And I went to college, fell in love with this woman, had a really tight romance. And I was like, this is going to be great. My college girlfriend and my buddies. And it was oil and water because, I just did different things. They didn't get along. And I was it was really painful for me to try to be kind of stuck in the middle of these two sort of sets of people that I loved so much, this woman and the guy. So like, then and to try to make sense of that, I went and made, that was my senior thesis film. It was basically this guy that brings his college girlfriend home and has this terrible
Mm,
decision where he feels like he's stuck in the middle. And it won an award at NYU and this and that. So
yeah.
I was, so my voice kind of came from that. It was really just trying to make sense of things and also going, well, they're saying, and they were right. It wasn't like they were going, hey, we're not, like, Bloodsport's fine, but like, we like these other ones. And I wasn't like, I still like Bloodsport for what it is, but I just realized that you can, like, a really interesting thing is sort of like, if you look at Rocky, the original, and Bloodsport, they're both stories about guys fighting, but Rocky is also this really beautiful drama, so you can just
Yes.
you can just appreciate it on a couple of different levels. So once I really understood that, I was like, oh, that's awesome. So understanding the levels of my own life, understanding the levels in some movies that people were like, these ones are really pretty exciting to us. That's how I was able to find my voice. And I was doing very personal dramas. The summer after I left NYU, I made a movie about the guys on my NYU soccer team and how we were painfully mediocre. We weren't great. We weren't terrible. It was like a hangout film. It's kind of like Dazed Confused for a Division III college soccer team. And it was great for what it was. And but it definitely gave me a sense of voice, but I really wasn't getting the attention from Hollywood. So later in my career, what I realized, I could do those personal characters, and if I lean into a genre like thriller or crime thriller or something like that, I could do the character work that I love to do, and then also just express it in a way that was the broader audience could really appreciate. So, and that's what I did. So the first thing I sold was was an alien invasion film, but it was very, very grounded characters. I mean, it was a super, it plays out like a shooter event or like a terrorist attack. I mean, it's really grounded and gritty, because that was what I was interested in. When the producer first came to me, he was like, hey, he's like, because I was pitching him to get involved with this other thing. And he was like, no, write me like a genre movie. I was like, oh, I don't like genre movies. And I was like, well, hold on a second. There's some genre movies I really love.
Yeah.
So what if I find my voice inside of a genre? And that's how I did it. So
Awesome.
So I love that question for me. So that's how I did it personally. But when I coach somebody else, I have an even more efficient way of doing it. I have actually a whole nine-step system. And step one is basically listing your favorite films and your favorite shows. And then I have a conversation with you about why you love the favorites. And then it's really easy because I've been doing it for so long. I can find the connective tissue. And I can find, like you, Luke, are an absolute world-class expert on your favorite 10 films and shows, because you could have seen it at your age. You might have seen 10,000 movies, and that's of 100,000 you could have chosen from. Like movies, TV shows from the whole history of cinema and TV. There's 100,000 hours of options, maybe more, right? You've actually seen, let's say, 10,000, and of the 10,000, you isolated to 10 films, 10 shows. Dude, that is your creative DNA. And when you sit with me and you tell me why you love those things, because you might have a couple on the list that are on my list too, but we might love them for different things. When I get that list and I get why you love it, that tells me with laser precision what your superpower is. Right. And then that's step one. And then step two, I go from that place. What are you called to write next at this point? And so it's all very precise. And like everything people write is so in my programs are so singular to them because of this very specific step-by-step process.
Yeah, I love that. I think that sounds like such a cool being able to look at someone's films and TV shows and then pinpoint that. I think that's awesome. I'm like thinking, I should do that myself. I think it'd be pretty cool, man.
Well, look, you can get it in my book. My book's $7. I'm not here trying to sell myself, guys, but I'm just saying I have a book. It's $7, and just it goes through the whole 9-step process, so you can do it on your own. And if you and it actually comes with a bunch of bonuses. One of them, like, these follow-up emails that say, "Hey, are you reading it? What's going on?" Because what happens is, you know how it is. We buy a book, we're like, "Oh, it sounds great," and then we never read it or whatever. So like, this is a way to kind of go, "Hey, look," and if you don't want to read it, that's fine. But like, it's an extra reminder of good energy. Like, I like that guy. I like this book. So it can help you. And it's a straightforward system. That was the whole thing with me, because like, I went to NYU Film School. I did Bob McKee's seminar. I did all these different systems and things because I loved it. I was fascinated with it. And when I came around to teaching it myself, I took the best bits from all these other things and my own personal experience actually selling scripts. And you know, and I was like, oh, here's a specific way that I know that it works for me, and I've sold scripts using the system, and I teach it to other people, so it works.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm assuming you can grab this book off your website, correct?
Yeah, I'll give you
Or
a
is
link.
Cool. And I'll make sure all these.
I had it on Amazon for a bit, but it's better to get through my website. If you get through my website, you get the follow-up emails. So.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'll make sure though there will be links for listeners. There will be links in the description for all this stuff. Just so you know.
And
so
one more thing, because just so that I'm not like just plugging my own stuff.
You plug away, buddy.
You can use any system, guys. Like I figured it out. I tried a bunch of different things, but Blake Snyder's Save the Cat system was really instrumental for me, totally revolutionary for me.
Yes.
Some people hate him, some people love him. I loved him. I actually took his weekend seminar with him before when he was alive. He was amazing. So like, it doesn't have to be my system or Blake's system or whatever, but like what I warn anybody who's listening to this, who's kind of, you know, hasn't quite figured it out, or somebody who's been around for a while is like, I think they haven't figured it out, like maybe, but like maybe if you're not breaking through the level, maybe like take any system, doesn't have to be mine, and really crush it. Master that one system.
Yes.
And make sure you really fully realize that talent on that one system, like level 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, and then add other things to it. So, because one of the things I see is they kind of Frankenstein a system together, and they're actually they're playing to their weaknesses without realizing it. So one system is better than any, and so it doesn't have to be mine.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Absolutely. I also like Blake Snyder, and I was rereading bits of Save the Cat before we chatted, because I know that you're a big fan of his. And like one of the really simple things that he tells people to do at the very beginning of his book is write a log line, and if you have a good log line for your story, then you've kind of got something to work with. And as I reread that, I was like, God, that's so dang simple, but also like really smart, because if I could say in a sentence what the essence of the story is about, then I know where this is meant. I know where this is supposed to sort of go. You know, and stories can obviously change, stuff like that, but that so helpful, I think.
So let me make a point around this, because it's really powerful. Yeah. That's step 2, right? Step 1 of my system, of my 9-step system, is 1, get clear on your superpower. Step 2 is get clear on the concept as expressed through a log line. And here's why you're right. It's so interesting because it's so simple, but like almost nobody does it. Or they'll be like a half-assed, or they'll only do. There's really kind of two uses of a log line. One is for when you're developing the story at the beginning to stay on track, to make sure it's clear and cohesive. And the second is like a pitch thing that it's already done. You're trying to get somebody to watch the film or read the script, right? So they're two very different functions, and they'll have different styles because of that. But that development log line is essential to keep you on track, and that's why I have it for step 2. But here's why. Especially anybody that's been around the block a few times, guys, it's always about the fundamentals. Like if you look at, let's say, high level soccer, or in England they call it football. I saw this wonderful analysis. A lot of the highlights is, people, let's say it's in a 1v1 situation, some guy's trying to pass the other guy, and you'll see, the step over, the fancy thing, the flip over the thing, or whatever. Like those are the highlights. Yeah. But somebody did a study, and it's something like 98% of the time, one player with the ball is passing the other player. They use a change in direction or a change in speed. That's it. That's it. Like if you can do that, so the professionals get so good at those simple things that they don't need they can do those things or whatever, and that's actually get some of the highlights or whatever, but like, it's the fundamentals, guys. So for writing novels, screenplays, anything, if you can't articulate your concept in one sentence, like here's the thing: I've almost never read a whole script. Like people say, "Oh, here's my idea," and and there's a direct correlation between the clarity and preciseness and punch of the one sentence and how I feel about the whole 100-page script. It's a direct correlation, and so. And it doesn't occur to us when we first start writing, because you watch a movie, you're not thinking concept. You're like, oh, the characters, and they're saying this, and they're doing this, and that's funny, and blah, blah, blah. So you will go, oh, I'm going to write a script, and you just start, you go like, oh, it's about blah, 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 and then you start going. But if you dial in that concept, it's an absolute game changer in terms of the quality, the speed, the depth, and the full realization of your vision.
Yes. When you're kind of in that stage, I kind of want to get your take on the importance of making sure you you understand and know what your theme is, because I think theme is also really important, kind of wrapped up with all this, is understanding what your theme is, kind of what you're trying to say, in my opinion. But what is it, what are the pitfalls you see, and how do you kind of help people improve in sort of understanding the importance of theme, like when you're dealing with up and coming or new writers, or those who seek out your assistance?
Yeah, theme is really important and really tricky. I'm actually doing a training on it right now because it's such a great subject, because it's another thing that can be like a game changer if you get it right, and like an absolute time waster, like years. You can spend years if you don't have a clear theme, kind of it being a foggy sort of wandering through the woods. So in simplest terms, it's the moral of the story. What's it about? And there's some really good thinking on it. This guy that I'm doing the training with, Scott McConnell, is wonderful at theme. There's another guy who wrote a book called The Moral Premise, Stanley Williams, really good book. That one's great because he surveys a lot of other teachers of the craft and how they spoke to theme, like Bob McKee and other people. There's a real density to this thing, to Stanley's book, Moral Premise, but it was really good. So, but at the end of the day, just kind of like I said about system, you don't necessarily need mine or the other guys, or you need your own. You need to be able to go, look, this is about X. And like, to my mind, every scene in my movie is about X, and the character, the hero goal and conflict, and the finale, what happens at the end, that's my view of X. And so it's A, it's clear, and B, it's compelling. So you don't be like, hey, this is about bananas, and it's just about a banana sitting on a table. It's like, okay, that's clear, right? Yeah. But like, it's not very compelling, right? So you want crystal clear, and then you also want something that's like, oh my God, like, so, and yet it can be tricky, and you don't want to get into a rabbit hole of does it have to be expressed in words, or like, theme, anti-theme, or this or that. It's like, you want to get your hands around it enough and know that there are professionals that are legends that either don't consciously think of theme, they do it intuitively, or they will say, oh, the theme of this movie is X, and I'm looking at that movie and I don't see that theme the way that they said they saw it at all. So there's a personal component to it, there's a subjectivity to it, but like, you can see it clear as day when there's lucidity and cohesiveness in a story around theme, and when it's fuzzy, when it's maybe about two things. You never want it to be two things, one thing, and through that one thing is a prism for all things.
Yeah. Can you? This is going to maybe put you on the spot. Can you think of a film or give an example of a film that just has perfect clarity with its theme?
The example that is most clear for me is Shawshank Redemption, and the way I would describe that, the theme of that film is really hope, or hope versus despair. So for the two people out there that haven't seen Shawshank Redemption, it's a prison movie, came out in the early 90s, and based on a really wonderful novella that Stephen King wrote, called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. Bad title, I think, bad title for the movie. Wonderful movie, and it's basically about this guy who's accused of murdering his wife, being thrown in jail, and this friendship that he has with this guy who's already a long timer in jail. The guy that's already in jail in the movies is his name is Red, played by Morgan Freeman. Tim Robbins is Andy Dufresne, the guy that is accused of killing his wife. And the way it's structured is really powerful here, guys, when you're wanting to think about theme, because Andy is an absolute hope machine.
Mm.
he kind of drives the narrative because he's basically in this place trying to get out. And he hopes in the beginning, he hopes in the middle, he hopes in the end. He's hope, 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 hope.
Mm.
Red, the Morgan Freeman character, is a man of despair in the beginning. Cynicism, cynical is hope. You can't hope in here; it'll get you killed, right?
Yeah.
And then through his friendship with Andy and watching the results that you get, and some scenes are like, Andy's is hoping, but then he gets attacked by people. I mean, so it's not. So it's a really beautiful oscillation of, whew, in my life, should I be hopeful or should I be in despair and cynical? And it's a really beautiful oscillation of that experience. I think it's why it hits so deep for so many people. And ultimately, in the end, Red looks at how Andy conduct his life and looked at how he was steadfastly showing up in hope, one situation after another. Red was like, you know what? I'm going to get busy living or get busy dying. And that is an expression of him learning to go from despair to hope. And then he goes and he hopes. Here's another interesting thing because I know you have people in your audience that write novels and also screenplays. In the novel, it ends really in the novella. It ends beautifully with Red on the road to see Andy, and he says, and it's something like, I hope the skies is blue, because basically the Andy character says, I'm gonna get out of here someday and I'm gonna go on this beach and I'm gonna do these things, right? So then they kind of have this potential reunion. In the book, he never gets there. He's on the way there, he's on the bus, and he goes, and it was really beautiful. He was like, it didn't matter that he didn't get there. It didn't matter that he didn't see it, because he now became a man of hope without real consequence. He said, look, I may or may not ever meet him, but I am 100% a man of hope. And that is a really deep lesson, because it's not real hope if you're getting all the stuff. It's hope whether you don't know if you're going to get the stuff or not. And so the book ended that way, and I thought that was really powerful. They originally ended the movie that way, where Morgan Freeman was on the bus heading out to get Andy and saying, I hope this is going to be great. I'm a man of hope. And it ends, and the audience was like, what the hell? This effing sucks. They were pissed. And so they reshot an ending that's kind of saccharine in my mind, where they cut away, and all of a sudden there's this big sweeping thing and music, and they see Andy on the beach, and then Red comes over, and they come in and they embrace, and the effing audience goes nuts. Yeah, they loved it. So, so look, I feel like in terms of me, like if I was writing the novel or if I was writing the adaptation, I think they both made the right choice. I think for the novel, and for me personally, I like the process of being in hope and just trusting that. And like, if I really understand something, I don't need the payoff. I know it already.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a deeper lesson. But movies are a little different. Movies are, they want to, you're showing more elements, and they want to see the payoff. And, and again, I would have my own theory, and then I would listen to the audience and play to the audience. And if the audience is like, dude, we don't like this, we like this one better, I think they made the right choice and said, look, this is a beautiful movie. Let's give them more of a feeling of completion here. Yeah. And so I think they made the right choice.
That's interesting, because I read the novella earlier this year, and I loved it. It was wonderful. It took like about 10 minutes to read. It's very, very, very short. But it's great for all the reasons that you've said. But it's also interesting, the ending being, ambiguous as to will Red find his friend or not in the end, because then it sort of made me think, as you were talking, made me think of Blade Runner, and how that's famous for having that stupid tacked on ending in the cinematic release, the original release of Deckard and Rachel riding off into the sunset in this wonderful green landscape and all that kind of stuff, whereas the original idea was it was meant to end right after he picks up Rachel from his apartment, and you see the little unicorn, and it's like, well, what comes next is ambiguous, and we don't know. And it's fascinating to me how, like, something like that, where people wanted that ending for Blade Runner, and then over time, everyone sort of began to realize that was, it's not what Ridley wanted. But over time, the actual ending is by far the best. Where in my
The
opinion,
best, yeah, that's it. That's the question, right?
yeah,
And it's a great question, right? It's like, if we're doing this just for our own personal experience, then who cares? We could do exactly what we want. If we're doing
yeah,
it at the professional level, we're there in service. It's about the audience, and
yeah,
and it's about my interpretation of serving the audience. And I am absolutely free to
mm,
only create partnerships and good relationships with people who want to serve an absolute super narrow audience or a
right,
gigantic audience. I get to
yeah,
choose. And
yeah,
and anybody listening to this might be in a point in your career where you're like, no, look, I'm cool. I want to just really blow away this smaller sliver, or
mm,
I want to be in a place where like I want like everybody on the planet to see this damn movie, and I want to make it as broad and beautiful. We all have
yeah, yeah,
those different sides in ourselves. The side of us that's a little more popular and sort of life of the party, and the part of
mm,
us that's more of a wallflower, right?
yeah,
And so my invitation to anybody watching this is just know that like there's no absolute. We're here to serve, and
yeah,
you get to choose who you serve, how you serve, when you serve, all those things, and just make it beautiful in that relationship. And it might mean going a little more popular, or it might be going a little more artsy. And
yeah.
either way could be perfect depending on what you're looking to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah, very, very true. Let's sort of pivot from theme into tension,
Mhm.
and because I kind of want to get your take on where when you're coaching new people, what are some of the kind of the typical issues you see with the creation of tension, and how do you basically go about resolving that and helping them improve, amping up the tension for their scenes.
I love that question. I completely revolutionized the way I thought about tension after reading a Duffer Brothers script. This was before they blew up with Stranger Things. They wrote this other script
Mm,
called Hidden that was made into a movie that wasn't all that well received. But my
mm,
goodness, that screenplay was phenomenal. And
mm,
so I'd actually written a draft of that alien invasion film I'd said before, and it was really short. It was like 55 pages. And it was, a feature length thing. And I was like, I knew that was a flag. I wasn't like, oh no, it's wrong. I just felt like all the pieces were there, but something was going on. And I
mm,
heard from somebody that the Duff brothers had written the screenplay, and the tension was really good. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let me check out what they're doing. And
mm.
literally 2 pages in, it's an effing revelation.
Wow.
What they did was slowed the F down. They
Mm,
played with their toys. Lots of white space, one thing, and just the next thing. And it was an absolute revelation in my pagecraft. And I was already really experienced at that point, but I was
mm,
like, oh, I get it. I was like, that's the question for everybody listening to this, whether you're writing a novel or a screenplay. It's like, what is the minimal amount of words, or what is the rhythm or the cadence of words that's going to deliver the emotional impact that you want, or at least, uh, facilitate or influence the reader or of the script of the novel to create the emotion in themselves. And so
mm,
what I learned from the Duffer Brothers script Hidden was fewer things. It's like it's like with tension. It's like think about romantic tension.
mm,
If it's porn, it's just bang bang bang, right? But if it's really if it's something that's a romantic scene and the lovers are almost going to kiss,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
slowing it down is one main simple thing you can do, and then just not too many elements. If you've got 5 elements in a scene, do you really need 5?
mm,
Try 2 or try 1. One simple thing, slow it down, and just notice, like try choice X and then feel into your body. Like I
mm,
feel that gut punch tension when I'm crushing it, and I don't feel it when I'm either putting too much in or rushing past it, or it could be too slow, but usually it's not. If you're mindful enough to go, oh, slow is often way the F more tense,
mm,
then you're kind of dialing it in, and then you're just feeling like, wow, that's really great. One great example to me I'm a big Stanley Kubrick fan. There's a Full Metal Jacket poster behind me.
Yeah.
He made this movie called Barry Lyndon in the 70s. And it's really long and slow and kind of a bit boring. I love Kubrick, but it was a bit boring. And yet there's a scene in Barry Lyndon where there's a duel. Holy smokes. It is absolutely not only my favorite Stanley Kubrick scene of all time, probably my favorite scene of any movie ever. And they milk the living F out of that tension. And it's just slow. And so that would be the main thing. If you're interested in tension, my question for you is, can you slow this down and use more minimalist elements and feel into your body? And if that feels like, if you feel like, you've done some good writing that day in tension, if you're like, you feel like you did like some sit-ups because your stomach muscles are like ripped because you're like, oh my God. That's how when tension's working.
Yeah. I love that. I'm interested as well to kind of look at a few other things outside of theme and tension now. And what do you think is, in your opinion, the most common recurring? Maybe there isn't one particular thing, but the most common recurring issue that new screenwriters have that you help them with? Is it one thing or is it multiple things?
I think if it's a new screenwriter, well, let's get a little more clarity here. If it's the person that's writing their very first screenplay, they want to do it, they've dreamed about it, they may have read a couple books, whatever. Like, my advice to them is, like, nothing you do is wrong. Just write it and have fun. Like, literally, you're going to get so much information about yourself out of that experience. Just try to finish it. Just move forward. Don't even worry about structure. Don't even read my book, whatever. Just write. Like, there's like that toddler period where you just have to like get up and get on your feet and fall down and get up. There's just so much, like, just do it for the joy of doing it. Right.
Yeah.
That's step one. Because sometimes what they'll do is it's perfectionism. They think they have to do this or whatever. Other times people are like, oh, I had fun and they did it. Right. So, but I would say phase one is just make sure you're having fun. Actually, that's probably the same thing in all the phases, but it's challenging for different ways. So let's say the 3 phases are very first script, bunch of scripts, but you haven't broken through, or you've actually then broken through at the professional level, but you're not working as much as you want. So those kind of 3 different things. But the number one problem in all 3 of those camps is you're not really deeply intrinsically enjoying the flow and the process. The flow and the process when you're first starting is, it doesn't matter, just go blah 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 blah, and then because you might not even like it. You might be like, man, I spent 2 months writing the script, it's whatever, and I'm like, I don't ever have to write a script again ever. And that's like awesome. And go do something else, do poetry or play music or just be a banker. It doesn't matter. Like, only the people that are most deeply called to this should be doing it. Otherwise, do something else that's your calling. So that's number one. Do you even want to do this damn thing? Yeah. So from the fun, from the bliss. Stage 2 is, no, you've written 2, 3, 5, 15, 20, but like, you can't get Hollywood to pay attention to you. You can't, you're figuring, you're good, but not really great. What's going on there? Oftentimes it's the same thing. You're not intrinsically deeply into your world-class uniqueness, superpower, vision of you and coming from that place. You might be doing it like overly rebellious, like, F you, I'm going to do my $1 billion movie and I don't care if there's nobody can finance it. You know what I mean? Or, or you might be chasing the market or whatever, but you want to be deeply, soulfully connected to yourself and the kindred spirits out there that are also like you, for the sheer joy of it. Yeah. And there's something you're doing to block yourself from that place. That's number 2. The third camp, when you're actually already hitting at the professional level, it's the same thing. A lot of times there is, you also go, well, look, I already made it. Now I'm entitled, or I'm supposed to do it and the rep is supposed to do this, or that, or you might have this secret fear that you had your fastball, but you lost it. But it's really the same thing. It's, how do I get in and go, okay, if I knew I couldn't fail, if this was going to go perfectly, what would be the thing that I write? And how would I write it? What would my process be? And so when you find the right system, it helps you stay into your flow state and stay into that blissful experience. And when you figure out, oh, this is a hard story problem. Do I do this? Again, hard story problem is a construct. We created that idea. And I invite you to kind of shift from there to like, ooh, I'm in the swamp. I'm not sure whether we go this way or that way. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to relax. I'm going to let the idea come to me. But allow the process itself to be easy. It's a choice. And people don't realize it's a choice. But if we're not allowing it to be easy, it's harder to enjoy it and get real satisfaction from it. And then we end up either giving up or, saying it's hard or saying Hollywood doesn't like my type or blah, 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 all sorts of million excuses when you always have 100% control over. Remember, we talked about at the very beginning. What do we control? What do we not control? We can control finding a system for ourselves. We can control the way that we write. At every stage of our process. And I promise you, even when you're going to pay lots of money and blah, 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 the number one compensation you always get is the intrinsic satisfaction of realizing your vision for life in your screenplay.
Yeah, I love that because that sort of links into you kind of answered it already, but the one of the other questions that I had for you was kind of what is probably one of the biggest hurdles that writers face internally, and I feel like maybe for myself more than other people maybe, but I feel like there's a sense of kind of doubt or self-doubt about your skills and stuff like that, and really what you were just saying there with that sort of system, that swamp analogy is it's like you breathe in, you kind of just keep going instead of give up. Really, you. That's
exactly it. So what you're saying is, so like 100% of writers ever get that swampy experience.
Yeah.
The ones that are professionals and productive stay with it and keep moving forward. The ones that haven't learned to be at that level yet spiral into doubts. Oh, I'm an imposter. I can't do it. Blah, blah, blah. Somebody else would have known what to do. And by the way, no matter how accomplished you are, you still have those same thoughts and patterns. Like, I'm 41 scripts in or something like that. And I still have days where I feel really significant fear. The difference is, I'm like, hey, fear, how you doing? What are you doing here? You're here again?
Yeah.
All right, get out of here. Now let me write. Like it's a real gentle, playful internal dialogue. Whereas early in my life, it was different, and it's a practice. That inner dialogue is a real practice, and gentleness is important. Not taking yourself too seriously. Again, if I'm a writer and I can't write, then who am I? I'm fucking nothing, right? Or like, no, I'm a human being, and and I had, life stuff come up, and like if something's going on in the world that's really overwhelming, how do I get to a sensitive, vulnerable place to write a story? And so sometimes, if you're a professional, that's, you can find a way. But sometimes even when you're a professional, you're like, you know what? I'm not going to do it today. I'm going to live my life and do something else and come back to it tomorrow. But so it's not like professionals don't have doubts. Professionals are good at dancing with those doubts. And actually, here's another tip for everybody. Your doubts, your fears, that terror, that is your force of antagonism whispering to you on the story that you're writing. So the style, the flavor of the fear that I will have in my next writing session or whatever, if I actually lean back and I listen to that energy and I personify it or I quantify it in some way, it's absolutely the antagonistic energy in whatever I'm writing. It's like a dream. Everything that comes in a dream, there's a way of using it into your life if you interpret it the right way. So the way that you're procrastinating, the energy of it, the style of your procrastination, it's your villain whispering to you who they are. Listen. Yeah. And then get back in and write the hell out of it.
I love that. And it's great because I kind of feel like we've come full circle with this conversation. I feel like from the beginning with the roller coaster talk to this, we've kind of come full circle, which is probably a good time to kind of bring this to an end. Brooks, I had a lot of fun chatting with you about all of these topics. I hope to have you back on in the future at some point. Where can people find you on the internet if they so choose?
I'm basically Brooks Elms pretty much everywhere. You can Google me. You can go brookselmscoaching.com. or there's Brooks Elms coaching.com. I also like to do marketing. So I do, because the wonderful thing about marketing, anybody here who's like a copywriter or whatever, because when we write like a novel or a screenplay, it's a long, slow feedback loop, right? It's a little faster if you got a producer attached or a publisher or whatever. But in the interim, again, because you have this whole thing career, if you could do anything in the marketing fields or copywriting, it's really beautiful because you get a faster feedback loop. Or if you just get on your social media profile and express ideas and build your audience and play with your audience and dance, you get a fast feedback loop. That keeps you sharp as a writer. So anyways, so that's why you could probably find something at brookselms.com or Brooks Elms coaching or Brooks Elms coaching. Or just like on Twitter or Twitter X or whatever you want to call it. I am at Brooks Elms, or LinkedIn. I'm at Brooks Elms. And I'll give you a link to that 5-question self-evaluation that you can do for free, which will really give you an insight into like what's 100% of my control and what can I focus on to really make a big difference in my screenwriting career. Happy to give that to you.
Cool. Yeah. And anyone who's listening, check the links in the description. They'll all be there. Find Brooks, buy his book or not, but I think you should do all the courses, do all the 5 steps. It's gonna help you out.
We're about to find, like if you felt like that excitement, you're like, oh my God, there's something, then buy the book.
Yes.
If you don't. But here's the thing: if you don't buy, find something else. Find somebody else that you're really excited by, who really lights you up, who has some promise. Like find somebody, because that'll speed up your journey when you learn from somebody who's a couple steps or a lot of steps ahead of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Brooks, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I'll see you next week. Adios.
Bye, guys.
The Secret Circle.